I wanted to do a video for people who've had ME for a while. I'm kind of thinking, probably 3 or more years. And really, this is the video that I really think I should have been able to watch and taken on the knowledge and ideas from way back when I'd only had ME for that amount of time. And uh, over time, as it's passed, ME was for a while thought of as a bit of a diagnosis of exclusion, and still a lot of people think that is the case, although it's not. Um, and they had a cluster of symptoms, often with fatigue being quite high up the list. And then they just got given some treatment, or they didn't get given some treatment, and they just eventually felt they got all they could from the medical profession and thought they got experienced lots of gaslighting, a lot of prejudice, a lot of frustration, a lot of false hope. And they got to a point where they don't engage too much with uh, the medical profession, and that's really who I'm sort of aiming this video at. And it's the things that I wish I knew. You know, I've now 11 years of having ME. My maths isn't always great anymore. I'm thinking what I wish I knew 8 years ago. So ME is generally thought and understood to be a post-viral syndrome or condition. Now, one thing with ME is it's a bit like old age. It often doesn't happen alone. Often you're going to have other issues with it too, other um, post-viral issues and syndromes. There's a lot that can be done to manage some of the symptoms we experience with ME, and quite often that just wasn't done a number of years ago. I'm not going to make out that it's done now, but there's certainly a lot more that's known about conditions such as dysautonomia and some of the other conditions that people sort of are experiencing. So I'm going to give myself as an example. So in my case, I was diagnosed with ME in 2012, and I highlighted a number of issues I was experiencing that didn't really closely tie within ME, particularly as how it's defined in the UK rather than in the States. And those issues were just dismissed as ME and just things that had to be put up with and get along with. It's now come to light that I've probably had, in fact, almost certainly had dysautonomia, which is problems sitting or standing, relieved by lying down. And I'm fairly sure that if I'd got help with this 8 or more years ago, I'd had a much higher quality of life in those years. And this is an issue that I had repeatedly told doctors and medical people, look, I'm having these problems. I'd even gone in to doctors saying, I've seen this thing about POTS. It sounds similar to some of the issues I have. Can you explore this? And they did a very bad job of a active stand test, and that didn't show things conclusively. So they said, oh, you don't have this or anything like it. And it's clear that I did and I do. These issues got so much worse with long COVID. It became sort of indisputable, and it's been incredibly restrictive. But that's an issue that should have been picked up, and there are things that can be done for that help. With dysautonomia, little things like managing your water intake, managing your salt intake, uh, wearing certain different types of clothing, managing when you eat your meals, all can make quite a big difference. And that's even aside from 20 or so drugs that can potentially help manage the condition. So there's a lot that can be done, and yet wasn't. I've recently discovered I have sleep apnea. That might have been around from ME. It might not have been around as long, I don't know. But a lot of research and nice guidelines indeed for me are suggesting if someone seems to be having any sort of sleep issues, seems to be having unrefreshed sleep, that they do a sleep study because there is quite a high correlation with sleep issues. And again, if you're not sleeping well, that's going to give you less energy going through the day, even aside of any safety issues about not being able to breathe and stuff in your sleep, or not getting enough oxygen intake in your So that's something that seems worth a lot of people being checked out. So there's other issues I'll go into shortly, but my key point really is that just because you've been diagnosed with ME and you're already doing resting, you're already doing pacing, that doesn't mean there's not more things that can be done to help improve your quality of life and treat some of the conditions or symptoms that you're experiencing. So really what I'm encouraging everyone who's been ill for a while is to actually relook at your symptoms and get help around them. Unfortunately, there's a lack of specialists who you can go to and will give you proper help. So I'm not suggesting this is an easy journey, but what I'm really suggesting is that people who've maybe got resigned to a certain quality of life that they think is down to their ME, they actually look to re-engage with research, with study, with the medical profession to see, is everything that's wrong with me down to ME, and are the things that can be done that can help. So about 50–60% of people with ME also have orthostatic intolerance, which is problems sitting relieved or standing relieved by lying down. Now, not everyone will, but many will. And those that do, they can look to get support and treatment around that. Again, there's real problems with the NHS at the moment. And in Britain as a whole, there's a lack of specialists in this area. There's a lack of expertise in this area. So it can be frustrating and difficult to get help. Just because something is difficult doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. There's quite a lot of cases where people have tried a drug or even things as simple as managing salt and water intake, and it has made a big increase in quality of life. So just because there's challenges, just because there might be difficulties, doesn't mean it shouldn't be sort of explored. In my case, I've been falling and stumbling a lot. I probably fall 5–6 times a week, maybe more. And this has been going on for 11 years. Now, it's pretty certain now that I have some sort of vestibular linked problem that came about at the same time as my ME. Now, exactly what that is, I can't say. It might be I've got chronic vestibular neuronitis, which is, again, a post-viral condition like ME. But as I was saying, ME is like old age. It doesn't come on its own. It comes with other problems. In some people, it's pain. In some cases, it's sleep problems. In some cases, it's standing problems. But it's very, very, very rare that it comes where the only thing someone's experiencing is some fatigue and some post-exertion malaise. It's really common that there's other issues too. So I thought I'd do this video to just encourage people to be aware that there may be more things that can be done, that it's quite likely people see the ME and not the person, and not the conditions, and not the symptoms, and maybe overlook other issues. And, in my case, it's sleep issues, it's standing issues, it's balance issues, it's with long COVID, respiratory issues. In your case, it might be very different. I'm not saying it will be the same, we're all different, we all have different issues. I also probably have MCAS type issues or, food intolerance, chemical sensitivities. But some of these sort of issues I've sort of picked up, and they're really common after ME. There's very few people with ME I know who are not intolerant to alcohol to some degree, for instance. There's a lot more to ME than what is sometimes said and talked about. So if somebody wants to know what they should do to get help and explore these things, I'm not really sure exactly what I'd say. I would say the NICE guidelines are a good starting point in terms of what to explore, the new NICE guidelines. I would say the ME Association's book, resource, the Purple Book, or what's on the website, should have come to that in terms of diagnosis of ME and other symptoms. It's kind of a good place to start. But to just look at potentially whether there are things that can help make some of the symptoms you're experiencing less bad, less extreme, co-morbidities or other issues you have that might be very, very treatable, and just encourage people to look into that. So basically, if you're suffering, it shouldn't be because there's not something that can be done. Okay, thank you.